Okay, I think it's time to begin. We're waiting on a few stragglers, but that's okay. Whenever I do these webinars, there's always a few people that are late. But for those of you that are on time, I have great news. I'm going to tell you a joke, and it's a really funny joke. I always start these classes with with a joke. So this is my favorite. I've tried several different ones. This is my favorite. So a Minnesota couple decided to go to Florida to thaw out during an icy winter. They planned to stay at the same hotel where they spent their honeymoon 20 years earlier. But because of their hectic schedules, it was difficult for the couple to coordinate their travel plans. So the husband left Minnesota and flew to Florida on Thursday, while his wife planned to fly down the following day. The husband checked into the hotel and there was a computer in his room, so he decided to send an email to his wife. However, he accidentally left out one letter in her email address and sent the email without realizing his error. Meanwhile, somewhere in Houston, a widow had just returned home from her husband's funeral. He was a Baptist minister who was called home to glory following a heart attack. The widow decided to check her email, expecting messages from family and friends. But after reading the first message, she screamed and fainted. The widow's son rushed into the room, found his mother on the floor, and saw the computer screen, which read, "To my loving wife. Subject, I've arrived. I know you're surprised to hear from me. They have computers here now, and you're allowed to send emails to your loved ones. I've just arrived and have been checked in. I see that everything has been prepared for your arrival tomorrow. Looking forward to seeing you then. P.S. It sure is hot down here." That's funny. If you think that's funny, type in "ha ha" in the comments, right? Okay, let's jump in here. Let's jump in. I've been doing this class. I've probably done this, geez, well over 100 times. I kind of pride myself in knowing more than the people at the Social Security office do. I'm an accredited National Social Security advisor. I've done extensive training on the subject. So I think you're going to get a lot out of today. I really do. I think it's going to be really, really good thing. So what really got me started with doing these classes and what gets me kind of excited about Social Security, I know it's hard to believe that it's possible to get excited by Social Security, but this is why. Let's think about this for a second. Let's say you are a married couple and each one of you is getting, let's say, $2,000 a month from Social Security. We're going to talk in a little bit here about how long everybody's living. But let's say it's very, very possible that they live another, let's say, 20 years. So they live 20 years, so that means they're getting $400,000 per year. I'm sorry, that's not right. So they're getting $24,000 each, right, per year. That's 48,000. And if you live for another 20 years, right, if we multiply 48,000 by 20 years, that's like $1 million. $1 million. I know it doesn't say so in your Social Security statement, but for many of you, Social Security is your biggest asset, way more than your house or your 401k or whatever it might be. So Social Security planning is so important, and it's so important to understand the rules. That's why I do this stuff. It's $1 million. When something's worth $1 million, you need to educate yourself before you do anything. You want to make sure you get the most out of the system, right? So again, my name's David Kennan. I'm the founder of Kennan Financial. I'm what's called a fiduciary. I'm a retirement planner that helps people with their financial planning. I'm father of four. I have wonderful kids, ages 10, 12, 14, and 16. My 16-year-old just got her driver's license. That's a little bit of a change. My wife is amazing. I got so lucky. I just married very, very well. She's a lot higher than me. I got very lucky with my wife. And also, I've written a book. This is actually my third book. My most recent book is called Spend More, Worry Less. Here it is. Spend More, Worry Less. And it's written for people that have been working their whole lives, saving money, growing their money, And then they get to this point in their life where they're about to retire and they're going, holy moly, you mean I have to I'm no longer saving and growing my savings. Now I actually have to use some of my savings to live my life, right? It's a very stressful transition in anybody's financial life. So it's really important, I think, to get a better handle on what to do and what not to worry about. A lot of people worry about things that they don't need to worry about. So I would encourage you, Amazon, well worth the money, spend more, worry less. Check it out. Okay, what is next? Okay, let's start out here with an example. Let's see how smart you guys are out in cyberspace. So in the example here, let's say Mr. is eligible for $2,000 a month. And let's say Mrs. is eligible for $800 a month. Okay, so let's say they're both 67, okay, and they go into the Social Security office together. Now, the first question is, when Mr. applies for Social Security, how much does he start getting per month? This is not a trick question, right? He starts getting $2,000 a month. Now, his wife goes in at the same time. She's the same age. They're both 67. She goes in and applies for Social Security. How much does she start getting per month? Now, this is a trick question. How much money does she start getting per month? She starts getting $1,000. Now, why is this? Because if half of your spouse's, right, is more than all of yours, so hers would normally just be 800, half of his is 1,000, which is more than all of hers, she would start getting the $1,000 a month. That's pretty cool, right? The next question would be, what would happen if Jane's husband passed away? What happens if Jane's husband passes away? Well, if Jane's husband passes away, her $1,000 would stop and she would start getting his $2,000 a month. So if one of you passes away, the larger of the two Social Security benefits remain. This is very important, a very important concept to understand. We will be talking about it later from a strategic standpoint of how to max everything out when it comes to things like this. And the last question is, let's say Mr. waited until 68 instead of 67. How much would he start getting? Well, he would start getting $2,160 or 8% more. You get 8% more every year that you wait to take Social Security. Okay, so that was my very basic Social Security situation there. I wanted to give you a sense of how all of this works, and maybe you knew some of that stuff, maybe you didn't. Okay, I see more people are joining us. Excellent. Most everyone is here now. Okay, let's talk about how long you're going to live, right? Because I was just talking before about how much money is going to come to you from Social Security, because you're probably going to live a long time. In fact, most people are probably going to live longer than they expect. Because if you start looking at the data, if you start looking at how long people are living in the US, this is crazy. The life expectancy for a healthy 65-year-old is 90 years old. If you go on Google and ask it, what is the life expectancy for an American? I think it says about 78 years old. But you have to realize, if you've already made it to 65, your life expectancy is no longer 78, right? Because things like infant mortality, people that die young from accidents, things like that, they pull down life expectancy numbers. But if you made it this far to 65, your life expectancy, everyone watching this, for every one person watching this that's going to die before 90, one's going to die after 90. It's absolutely incredible. Social Security is going to be coming into your household for a long time. That's why it's so important to do this correctly, right? It has long-ranging, what's the word? Long-ranging results. Consequences. That's the word I'm looking for. Consequences. Okay, let's start with some great news. I think the world needs more great news right now. I try to give people some good positive news, because I've acted as a fiduciary and financial planner for about 21 years now, and there's certain common misconceptions I see people have And these misconceptions can really derail your retirement. It really can, you really end up worrying about stuff you don't necessarily need to be worrying about. So let's start about talking about the solvency of Social Security. Is Social Security going to be there long term for you? Okay, great news. The answer is yes. I'm going to show you why in a second here. But Social Security, if you're getting close to Social Security, you are going to get what they say you're going to get, and you're going to get it for the rest of your life. I know you hear all kinds of scary things on the internet, all kinds of scary things out there, but the reality is you are going to get what you're going to get. Now, Boston College, they have this Center for Retirement Research. It's the preeminent think tank when it comes to retirement issues in the US. And what they say is, don't start benefits early because Social Security has money problems. You won't get more if you do. Nearly all proposals to fix Social Security would also protect those age 55 and older. So I am telling you, I stay so close to the system. I read their financial reports. I know there's scary stuff going on out there. It's going to stay there. Because think about this logically. If Social Security, if the government suddenly said, you know what, we have to cut everybody's benefits by 50%. Do you understand what that would do to our country? I mean, there'd be homelessness, it would be out of control. A lot of people are living only on Social Security, and the mess it would create by cutting Social Security would be so much more expensive to fix that mess than it would be just to keep Social Security going. Okay? So there is one major way that Social Security has found a way to keep the system going forever and ever, and basically forever, for decades. And this is what it is. It's kind of cool. So whenever you work, you pay payroll taxes, okay? So you pay 6.2% of your income towards Social Security. If you're self-employed, well, I mean, in this situation, your employer also has to pay 6.2%. So for every dollar you make, 12.4% of that money goes towards Social Security tax. If you are self-employed, you actually have to pay 12.4% in taxes just into Social Security. Social Security, believe it or not, taxes raised by Social Security are almost as much as federal income tax. You can't get away from this payroll tax. Now, here's the thing. You only pay your payroll tax up to a certain income level. In 2022, that number is around $170,000. So what do I mean by that? If you make more than $170,000, you only pay these taxes up to that number. So let's use an extreme example. Let's say you are Tom Brady, and Tom is making whatever it is, $30 million a year. Let's say he's making $30 million. So Tom, he has to pay on the first $170,000, he has to pay payroll taxes at 6.2%. But between $170,000 and $30 million, how much does Tom Brady have to pay in payroll taxes? Nothing. Zero, right? Everything from 170 to 30 million is not taxed. That's the maximum. Now, so this really is how they're going to keep the system going, because a few years ago it was like 115,000, and then it went up to like 130, 140, 155. Like, they're raising this number up pretty quickly. Next year it's going up to 185. So by increasing this maximum as far as taxation goes, they're going to keep the system going for a very long time. Decades and decades. This is a very easy fix. It's politically, people are okay with it politically. It's on both sides of the aisle. They're kind of okay with this. So good news. Social Security isn't going anywhere. They have plans as far as what of how they're going to keep it going. Don't let the scary stuff scare you. There's no reason to be scared. That's good news, right? I'm trying to interject some good news into this. We need more good news. Okay, let's talk about your full retirement age. So your full retirement age is not the age that Social Security says you should retire. It just very simply is, in their system, everything is based on your full retirement age. Your benefit, if there's a penalty or not, all kinds of stuff. So they use the abbreviation FRA, full retirement age. Okay, so if you were born in 1956, your full retirement age is 66 and 4 months. If you were born in 1957, your full retirement age is 66 and 6 months. If you were born in 1958, 66 and 8 months. 59, 66 and 10 months. And if you were born in 1960 or earlier, your full retirement age is 67. Okay, so keep that in mind. That's an important number to know because it's going to affect a lot of the things that we are going to talk about. Full retirement age. Like I said, they're not suggesting that's when you do retire. That's just how they determine all these benefits. I just went to the next slide and guess what it said to me? Amazing news part 2. I have more great news for you. More great news. I think there's even more great. I think I have a couple slides that have more great news. All right, let's talk about taxes in retirement. People are generally very surprised at how little they pay in taxes once they're retired, right? So in Florida, there's no state income tax. There's you're not paying into Social Security anymore. You're not paying into Medicare anymore. You're not putting money into your 401k. There's all kinds of Social Security isn't taxed the same as income. Regular work income is taxed. So there's all kinds of reasons why taxation in retirement, almost everyone that I work with that has been retired for a few years are shocked at how little they have to pay in taxes. So their Social Security actually goes longer than they expect it to because not much in taxes is coming out. So let's talk about that. So Social Security is only taxed in certain situations, okay? Now, if you are single and your provisional income, and we're going to talk about this, your provisional income is less than $25,000, and it is, okay, 34,000. And then if you're married, if your provisional income is 32,000 and 44,000. Okay. So let's talk about taxation and Social Security and how this works. So you see these numbers. So let's talk about this. You have to determine what your provisional income is, and your provisional income is very simply the formula that is used when trying to figure out if Social Security is taxed or not. So this is what they do. They take half of your Social Security payment. They add in any money you take from like an IRA or retirement account. If you're working part-time and are getting a 1099, they count that. If you're bringing in a pension, or if you have rental income coming in. So basically what it is they take half of your Social Security amount and then they add in all of your other income sources. So let's think about this. Let's say there's somebody, let's just say they're single and they're getting $2,000 a month from Social Security. Now that would only count as $1,000 into the formula. And let's say they're taking $1,000 a month from their IRA, and let's say they're getting, let's just make it simple. So they'd count $1,000 towards Social Security, half of Social Security, $1,000 because they're taking that out of their IRA each month. So that's $24,000 a year. So if it's less than $25,000, you pay no taxes. If your provisional income calculation works out, no taxes if it's less than $25,000. If you do this calculation and it's more than $34,000, you do pay taxes on Social Security. And if it's in the middle, you pay about half of what you would pay in Social Security. You pay taxes on about half of the benefit. Same thing if you're married. Under 32,000, no taxes. Over 44,000, taxes. In between, half, 50% is taxed. There are some ways to kind of not work the system, but there are some ways that you can reduce taxation on your Social Security using certain strategies but that is way outside what I can talk about in a class like this. But that's, again, that's great news. A lot of people pay a lot less in taxes than they are expecting once they retire. Moving on. Okay, so when should you start your Social Security benefit? Now, this is, let's just talk about some basics here. Each year you wait, your Social Security grows by each year you wait, your Social Security grows by 8%, okay? So let's say, for example, let's say somebody retires at 67, which is their full retirement age, and they get 2,000, let's say they're eligible for $2,000 a month. Now that same person, if they took it at 62, would have gotten 1,400, or about 30% less. Okay? The same person could wait all the way until 70, and if they waited until 70, they would get $2,500 a month. Wait, I'm sorry. Yeah, that's right. Am I right? That's right. $2,500 a month. Because if you compare 62 to 70, it's about $1,100 difference per month. So it's a big difference. Every year is growing by 8%. I mean, that's basically what it is. I mean, there's no magic timing. Like if you take it at, let's say, 62 versus somebody that took it 62 and a half, well, the person that takes it 62 and a half is going to get 4% more than the person that took it at 62. It's not like you have to wait until your birthday. There's not some like magic timing where you suddenly get a lot more. They just increase what you're eligible for each month by a little bit, okay? And the other question I always get when it comes to this is the way that the Social Security benefit is calculated is incredibly complicated, but they look at your best 35 years of earnings. It's not like your last 3 years. It's not your highest 5 years. They look at 35 years of earnings, okay? And they use a very complicated formula to figure out your benefit from that. So what this means is when people ask me, they say, Dave, I'm making more money than I ever had. You know, I'm kind of towards the end of my career and I'm making a little bit more money. Am I going to see my Social Security benefit really bounce up? And the answer to that question is no, you're not going to see it bounce up because it's based on the 35 highest years. Same issue if you start working part-time. Some people are concerned that since they're working part-time, maybe in their 60s, and they say to me, is this really going to hurt my Social Security benefit? Again, not really. The way that it's calculated is not going to make that big of a difference. Generally speaking, when you get a statement like in your late 50s, early 60s, what it says you're going to get is pretty close. It's not going to change all that much after that. So that's how that works. Yeah, the formula they use is just very, very complicated. And if during those 35 years, there's some years where you didn't work at all and there's like a zero, they average in that zero as well. All right, I'm getting a lot of questions here. I will do my best to get to them. I've done this presentation so many times that oftentimes people ask me questions and I'm thinking to myself, but I address that like 2 slides from now because I've already heard all the questions because I've done this so many times. I know what people are going to ask. Okay, so the average Social Security benefit in the country is $1,600 a month. The absolute maximum you can get in 2023 is $3,600 a month. In order to get $3,600 a month, you would have had to been working like making 6 figures for 30 years. I mean, you'd have to be making really good money for a very long time. If let's say you've been making $30,000 on average your whole life, you're probably going to get about $1,600 in Social Security. If you've been making $60,000 your whole life, you're not going to get twice as much money, even though you made twice as much money. You're going to get about $2,300 a month. And so they kind of smush in the benefits, right? Again, the calculation is very complicated, but fundamentally, this is kind of what you need to know, kind of get a general sense of how this works. Okay, this is a very common question I get. People ask me, well, can I work and collect Social Security at the same time? Can I work and collect Social Security at the same time? And the answer is maybe. So this is how this works. If you are not yet full retirement age, so if you're 62 through 66 and you take your Social Security, there are limits on how much you can make. Okay, so in 2023, the most you can make is $21,140. So if you are working, taking Social Security and making more money than that, they're going to start penalizing you. They're going to take away $1 for every 2 that you go over the limit. Let me give you an example. Let's say, this is actually true. This actually happened. I actually saw this in my office. Let's call her Ms. Nurse. Ms. Nurse was 62. She talked to her neighbor, and her neighbor thought he knew everything. And her neighbor scared the heck out of her and said, Social Security is going bankrupt. You need to take it. You'd be crazy not to take it as soon as you can. And she said, okay. So she took her Social Security and she started getting about $2,000 a month. The problem was she was still working, still making a lot of money. I think she was making like $50,000 a year. So what that means is, remember, you can make like around $20,000 once you're on Social Security. So she was $30,000 over the limit. So what they do is they take half of that, right, 15,000, and so that's the penalty. So that's what, about $1,200 a month that she would get penalized by taking her Social Security. So instead of getting that $2,000 a month, she would get $800 a month. So as you can see, it's a big penalty. It is a big penalty. So try not to do that. Be aware. Now, if Ms. Nurse was 67, if she was at her full retirement age, she can make as much as she wants. She can make the $50,000. There's no penalty, nothing like that. She would get her full $2,000. So once you're at your full retirement age, there's no limit. You can make $100,000. It doesn't matter. You can make as much money as you want once you are at your full retirement age. Oh, and the other thing is, when it comes to this penalty, right, the Social Security is only looking at work income, meaning you're going to a job, you're getting a W-2 or a 1099. It does not look at pensions. It does not, like, if you're bringing in money from a pension or taking money out of an IRA or have rental income or anything like that, it does not count towards this work formula. The 21,000 only counts towards, again, you're working, making money, going to a job, getting a paycheck. More amazing news. I'm looking at my slideshow here. More amazing news. This is a good one too. So this is years ago, and I've had it happen several times since, and it's upsetting to me. But somebody came into my office and they said, Dave, I'm retiring. I have a fair amount of savings, but I want to make sure that I don't spend any of it, because what happens if I have a major medical event in retirement? I mean, she said, I'm going to live on spaghetti and macaroni and cheese and never leave my house and have the air conditioning turned off. And okay, I'm exaggerating, but they have this mentality that they could be in big trouble if there was a medical event. And this person, and a lot of people, don't have a fundamental understanding of how Medicare covers you. Now, I don't know anything about Medicare. Don't ask me about Medicare supplements. This is all I know. If there is a maximum out of pocket that in any given year you could possibly pay if you're on Medicare. So let's say Mr. has a heart attack, okay, and he's on Medicare, and he gets a bill for $300,000. Major heart attack, was in the hospital for a long time. $300,000. He's freaking out. What am I going to do? I can't afford. How am I going to pay this back? I'm going to be in debt for the rest of my life. Hold on. Medicare, the most you can be out of pocket in any given year is $6,700. So even though his bill was $300,000, he is only out of pocket at most $6,700. That's great news. Let's say the next year he has another heart attack. Heart attack number 2. He has to pay, it's per year, right? So he has to pay another $6,700. Let's say the next year he has another heart attack. Well, at that point, I'm not sure he's going to make it through the third heart attack. I'm trying to be funny. If you find me funny, let me know in the comments. Just say, Dave, you are so amazingly funny. A lot of times I'm doing this in front of a big crowd, and I kind of get people are laughing at me. I don't know if this is funny. I'm just talking into a camera right now. All right, we're going to get into some crazy stuff now. We're going to talk about divorce and Social Security. So get ready for this. If you are divorced and you were married for at least 10 years and you are not currently remarried, you have all the same benefits as if you were still married. Get ready for this. So divorced, married at least 10 years, not remarried. Get ready for this. Let me give you an example. This is a real example. Let's talk about Aunt Jeannie and Uncle Doug. So this is my mom's sister. So Aunt Jeannie and Uncle Doug were married for a number of years, and then they got divorced. So they were married at least 10 years. Aunt Jeannie never got remarried. They're both right around 67 right now. Uncle Doug had a great job, paid a ton of money. He was eligible for like $3,400 a month from Social Security. Aunt Jeannie, she raised the kids, worked a little part-time here and there. She was only eligible for about $600 a month. So Aunt Jeannie went to the Social Security office and she said that my very intelligent, smart, and funny nephew Dave told me that I might be eligible for something off of my ex-husband. And the clerk at the office said, yes, that is true. You are eligible. Well, you tell me. He's eligible for $3,400. She's eligible for $600. If they were married, what would happen? She would start getting $1,700 a month, which is half of her ex-husband's benefit. Half of her ex-husband's benefit. So it's the same as if they were married. $1,700 a month. It's crazy. It's just how it works. Now, like let's say she was eligible for $3,000 and he was eligible for $3,400. Well, this doesn't work out then because her benefit is so close to his. But there are a fair number of situations where people are eligible for benefits off of their ex-spouse. Oftentimes they don't even know about it. So this is what I mean. When I talk to people, when people come into my office and we talk over all these various issues, this is one that's just like, I can find money for people. I have a great job because I keep finding money for people within the system, right? So let's take this one step further. What would happen in this situation if Uncle Doug were to die? Now, we don't wish any harm upon Uncle Doug, but let's say Uncle Doug were to die. What happens to Aunt Jeannie? She starts getting his full benefit of $3,400 a month. That's right. If your ex dies and they're getting more Social Security than you start getting their Social Security benefit. That's pretty wild. And I've had a couple people that came into my office, get ready for this, and they were widows and they didn't even know it, right? So like they like this one woman, she totally lost track of her ex-husband, had no idea what was going on with him. And I said to her, well, you better check to see if he's alive. I mean, it sounds kind of crazy, but it ended up that he had died. She didn't know. So she ran to the Social Security office as quickly as she could. And yes, she was eligible for a benefit off of her deceased ex-spouse. They didn't give her all the money that she missed out on. They let her retroactively get 6 months worth of benefits. But she was eligible for a survivor benefit and she didn't even know it. That's crazy. It's wacky. Okay, I'm getting a question. It's a question I always get. which is understandable. The question is, in that situation, what happens if Uncle Doug gets remarried? What happens if Uncle Doug gets remarried? Okay, so this is another true story, real life example. This is my grandpa. Grandpa is on my dad's side, and then grandma. So my paternal grandparents. So grandpa and grandma got divorced in the 1950s, which back then, I mean, it was scandalous. Stuff like that just didn't happen back then. But they did. They got divorced. And then grandpa met Katie, step grandmother Katie. And so grandpa got remarried to Katie. They were married for 30 or 40 years, maybe not that, maybe 30 years. And he was, I have two grandpas here. I guess grandpa could marry grandpa nowadays. I don't know. It was grandpa and grandma. So grandpa and grandma got divorced, remarried Katie. Grandma, when she applied for Social Security, was able to get half of her ex-husband's, right? Half of his Social Security benefit. But then grandpa died relatively young, like kind of in his mid-60s. So when grandpa died, Social Security called grandma. They don't seem to call anymore, but back then they called grandma and they said, look, your ex-husband died. You are now eligible for all of his Social Security benefit. And she said, all right, well, that's good to know. But what about poor Katie? I mean, Katie had to deal with this guy way longer than grandma did. What does Katie get? She gets 100% of what grandpa was getting too. Both Katie and grandma, they both get 100%, right? As long as you're married for 10 years, as long as you're not remarried, all that stuff, you're eligible for 100% of your ex's benefit. Wild. Wild. So my joke on this subject is your ex-spouse eating well and exercising? That is my joke at this portion of the presentation. Okay, let's talk about widow situations. Let's say you're a widow or widower. These situations are what really get me frustrated, because people oftentimes get very bad advice at the Social Security office when it comes to, right, if you're a widow or widower. By the way, maybe many of you out there already know this, but if you go to the Social Security office and expect to get any sort of accurate answer, you're going to be disappointed. If you go to the Social Security office and ask the same question 4 times to 4 people, 4 different answers. It's unbelievably frustrating. Maybe some of you have already been through this. I oftentimes have to get in contact with Social Security and correct them, even though I don't work for them. I understand the system better than they do. And the clerks have been told, they said, look, you are not here to strategize. You are not here to give your input or help them get the most money. You are here to get them in and out, period. So I always say to people, it's incredibly important. Before you apply for Social Security, you need to get all of this figured out. Do not go in and apply for benefits thinking you're going to get some sort of deep analysis, maximizing your benefit and all that kind of stuff. So I did want to mention, so I do personalized Social Security analyses for people. So what that means is we would have a call over Zoom. We'd have a virtual appointment, and I'd go through all of the variables in your life, right? Everyone has different situations, because I do these presentations and it's frustrating and people are asking me these questions and I'm like, but there's like 40 different scenarios. Like, it's impossible for me to go over every single thing that could be going on. So with these Social Security analyses, I look at your exact situation and we figure out exactly the best time, what strategy to use. So in order to qualify for an appointment like that, you have to have at least $250,000 in savings, okay? So what you would learn is, the best time to take your benefit, how to pay the least amount of taxes on Social Security. That's a big one. How to make sure you're getting the most from the system, strategize to make sure you're getting the most benefits from your spouse, I will also talk about how you can increase the size of your cost of living adjustments. There's some very sophisticated planning we can do when it comes to that. We can kind of talk about how much longer you have to work. That's an important thing. That's something we need to think about. And also we talk about, are you going to be okay financially for the next 10, 20, 30 years? It's important to start thinking about that too. So if you have at least $250,000 in savings and would like to get your free analysis, you can sign up for it on the screen. There should be a thing that you click on to sign up for it. You can go directly to my calendar and set up a time to sit with me. And people ask me like, all right, Dave, like, why are you doing this? Well, I found that if I give to the community, good things come back to me. But what I find is probably 1 out of 10 people that I do a personal analysis with, they need a fiduciary. They need a retirement financial planner to help them, right? So what that allows me to do, which is so cool, is I can give great free advice to 9 people, right? Because that one person allows me to pay my bills, and then the 9 other people I get to help, and I like helping people, so that's kind of why I do this. And the other thing is too, I don't know why, I've been having some problems with no-shows and cancellations last minute for these appointments. Understand that I am setting aside time specifically for you. I'm very busy here. I'm setting aside time specifically for you. I would love to help you. I want to help you. Just please definitely show up, and please try not to cancel last minute, because it does kind of mess things up for me. Okay, let's continue. So anyway, I got into that because the widow situations I see oftentimes. Let me give you an example. This is a true example. I've seen something similar to this several times. It really bugs me. It gets me upset. So let's say Ms. Widow let's say Ms. Widow is 62. She goes to the Social Security office. She just retired, and she said, I understand that I'm eligible for benefits for my deceased husband. And the Social Security clerk says, that is correct. You are eligible for $1,400 a month. And she goes, okay. But then the clerk says, but you have been working as well, and you are eligible for $1,500 a month. And she says, okay, cool. Well, I'll take my money. And she walked out of the office. She was going to get $1,500 a month. Everything was done. Big mistake. Monstrous, 6-figure, disastrous mistake. And I cannot believe the Social Security office lets widows and widowers, who need this money more than anyone, make this mistake. Okay, so in this situation, you absolutely, positively want to take the money. You want to take the survivor benefit. You want to take your deceased spouse's benefit. Why? Because if you take their benefit, what happens to your own benefit if you don't take it? It grows, right? It grows by 8% per year. So what you want to do is you want to take the survivor benefit of your deceased spouse and then let your own grow all the way until 70, all the way up until 70. So at 70, she'd get around $2,500, maybe more. So think about this. So, okay, yeah, she gets $1,400 a month for 8 years, and then it jumps way up to $2,500 a month. The more, if you start doing the math, like, okay, she lives another 20 years and she's getting all this extra money, it's a big difference. Do not make this mistake. If you are a widow or widower, I would really encourage you to set up a time to talk with me, because there's a lot of variables here, right? Like, what if this number is 1,800 and this is 1,300? What happens if your deceased spouse is 10 years older than you, or 10 years younger than you? There's all kinds of variables that you need to think about when it comes to something like this. So complicated. If you want to, I'm glad to take a look and get the most from the system for you. What's up next? Okay, let's talk about disability. Now, I don't know about how to apply for disability. It's very complicated. I don't know how that works. But let's say you go on disability and you're 50 years old and you start getting $2,000 a month. Does anyone know, where is this number coming from? How do they determine how much you're going to get from Social Security on disability? This number is the same as their full retirement age number. Okay, so basically what they're doing is they're giving you your full benefit, but they're like accelerating it to you, right? They're giving it to you ahead of time. So that's all it is. That's what happens is whenever you hit full retirement age, Social Security sends you a letter and they say you're no longer on disability, you are now in retirement, and most people don't even pay attention because it's the same check, right? So people just throw the letter in the trash and keep getting their checks. Oh, I got more amazing news. More amazing news. I think this is the last bit of amazing news, but it's really amazing news. Let's talk about the fact that Social Security increases at the rate of inflation. You get cost of living adjustments. Now, many of you might already know that 2023, there is an 8.7% increase. That's the highest increase that we've had in like 40 years. So that means if somebody's waiting from like 67 to 68, they get 8% more there and another 8.7% from the cost of living adjustment. If you haven't taken Social Security yet, the cost of living adjustment goes into your statement. Like the next statement you get will be 8.7% more. Obviously, if you're already getting it, you're going to see more, this year. In 2022, it was 5.9%. I mean, normally the rate of inflation ideally is kind of 2 or 3 or 4%. So that normally is the cost of living adjustment that you get. But this really is great news because I've sat down with people, believe it or not, who the Social Security benefit that they're getting, in their 80s, let's say, is almost twice what they were getting when they started taking it. These cost of living adjustments, they add up. They really add up. So like I said, that is great news. Cost of living adjustments, great news. Because, obviously people do worry about inflation and what happens way down the road. Things are more expensive, and when I'm in my 90s, and how am I going to pay my bills? A big part that's going to help with that is the fact that you are going to get your Social Security is going to keep increasing. Okay, let's talk about this. I would much rather one of you get $3,000 a month from Social Security and the other get $1,000. That's much better than both of you getting $2,000. So why is that, right? Because if one of you dies, this person would keep getting $3,000, this person would keep getting $2,000. It is essential that you build up one benefit as much as possible, because that benefit is not for you, it's for both of you. So a strategy, let me give you an example, actually. I have seen this example several times. So Mr. and Mrs., let's say Mr. is 62 and Mrs. is 50, say she's 58. And let's say Mr. is eligible for 2,000 and Mrs. is eligible for 800. I mean, she can't take it yet because she's not 62. 62, by the way, is the earliest you can take it. I think I forgot to say that. The earliest anyone can take Social Security is 62. Actually, I also forgot to tell you, if you are a widow or widower, the youngest you can take it is 60. But remember, if you're a widow, 60 years old and still working, you can't take Social Security because you're making too much money. So the income issues remain, but theoretically, you can take a survivor benefit as early as 60. Everyone else can take it at 62. So in this example, Mr. comes in and he's like, look, Dave, I'm not in the greatest of health. My brother died a year ago. My dad died at 70. I'm taking my Social Security at 62 because if I don't, I might never get anything, right? So his wife is sitting there and she's kind of looking strange at him, and she's going, but my mom lived 95 and my aunt lived to be 102. I have incredible longevity on my side of the family. What is her husband doing to her, really, without even realizing it? He's cutting her benefit. Right? So let's say in this example, I don't know how I would ever get him to do this, but let's say somehow we get him to wait until 70, at which point he'd probably be eligible for around $3,500. And let's say at age 70, he dies. Okay? So he was right. He never got a check. He's probably pretty upset at me. He never got a check. He died at 70. But what happens, right? She starts getting his full benefit. So instead of getting $2,000 a month for the rest of her life, she gets $3,500 a month for the rest of her life. And this is a big deal because she ends up living to be 98. And if you start doing the math and figuring out how much extra she got by using a strategy like this, it's a lot of money. We're talking hundreds of thousands, a huge difference. So when it comes to strategizing, it's very important to understand the concept that only the larger of the two benefits remain if somebody passes away. So usually the main breadwinner, the one with the larger Social Security benefit, we try to let that bump up as much as possible. The person with the lower Social Security benefit, that's not as important from a strategic point of view, but yeah, the larger breadwinner, you need to keep an eye on that one. Okay. Next question. Next strategic concept. I have a lot of people ask me, what is the break even when it comes to Social Security? What is the break even when it comes to Social Security? Now, what do I mean by that? What I mean by that is if you take Social Security at 62, you're going to get more checks, but they're going to be smaller. If you take it at 67, you're going to get medium amount of checks, and they're going to be medium sized. And if you wait until 70, you're going to get less checks, but they're going to be a lot bigger, right? So the question is, if we add up all of these checks and all of these checks and all of these checks, when does it all equal the same number? And that the age is right around 79 or 80, let's say, because if somebody was getting, well, it just breaks even. So at 80, if you add up all of these or all of these or all of these, it's the same number. Now, what this means is if you live past 80, you're going to start getting more overall because you waited and your benefit is bigger. So if you think you're going to live past 80, it can make sense to wait a little bit. If you don't think you're going to live till 80, it does make sense to take it earlier than that. And remember, think about you and your spouse, right? If you think one of you is going to live past 80, you got to think about this a little bit differently. So again, that's the break even. The break even's right around 80. That's where everything crosses over. I hope that makes sense. I don't think it's that complicated. I hope that makes sense. What is next? Let's see. Okay, this is another very important concept and something I help a lot of people with, and it makes a lot of sense in a lot of situations. The strategy is this. Does it make sense to spend down some of your savings in order to grow your Social Security, right? So let's say somebody has $500,000 in their 401k, and at 67, they're eligible for $2,000 a month. Does it make sense? So instead of getting $2,000 a month from Social Security, could it make sense to take $2,000 a month from your investment portfolio? Why? Because this is going to grow at 8% guaranteed. There's nothing, as you know, there is nothing out there that is going to pay you an 8% guaranteed increase return, right? And the other very important thing is if you build, the more you build it, the higher your cost of living adjustments become. It's just basic math, right? So if somebody's getting 1,000 and there's a 8% cost, and let's say there's a 5% cost of living adjustment, this person's going to get a $50 a month increase, right? But let's say that person waited and waited and waited and waited all the way until it was worth 2,000, and they got a 5% cost of living adjustment. It's the same percentage, but it's a different dollar amount, right? They'd get an extra $100 a month from the, you see what I'm saying? So again, this is a little more sophisticated. I do work with people on this. It makes a lot of sense a lot of the time. The money has to be invested in a very specific way. It's definitely a more sophisticated planning strategy. But But it's definitely something to look into, something that, and it doesn't necessarily mean you have to work longer. It's just a matter of you have different monies coming from different places at different times. Okay, here's another one I hear. Somebody will say to me, Dave, I am going to take my Social Security at 62. I know it's going to be less. I know I'm taking a penalty. I know all that stuff. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to take each and every month, I'm going to take that check I get from Social Security and I'm going to invest it. So over the next 8 years, I'm going to have all this money getting invested and growing, invested and growing. And by the time I reach 70, while I will be getting less money for my Social Security check, I'll have this big nest egg off to the side that I've created. And I hear people say that, and it makes sense. It's logical. I see what they mean by that. But in my experience, I've done this for 20 years. In my experience, it never works because human beings are human beings and nobody saves the money. Nobody is actually disciplined enough to do that. So you can do it if you want, but there's all kinds of tax issues with that. It's going to affect your cost of living adjustments. It generally doesn't make any sense. So I would gently suggest that you do not take your Social Security early and then think that you're going to save all that money and make a big portfolio out of it, because it usually does not work that way. So again, kind of like I mentioned before, if you have at least $250,000 in savings, you qualify for a personal analysis with me. Again, it would be a virtual appointment over Zoom. We would learn, obviously the best time to take your benefit, how do you pay the least amount of taxes on your benefit, how you make sure you get the most from the system, how to make sure if you're eligible for benefits off of your spouse or ex-spouse, make sure that you're getting the most from that. Just how to increase your cost of living adjustments. There's some really profound planning. And I was just this week, I talked to somebody, and just a very simple tweak in the way that we took her Social Security increased how much she got by like $27,000, like one time. But $27,000 is a lot of money. Yeah, I mean that's a big deal. There are so many variables when it comes to this. Like I said, so when we meet, I'm going to get a general sense of like where you stand in your life and get all these variables put together, and then tell you exactly what to do and why to do it and all that good stuff. And again, why I do this is I want to be totally transparent here. About 1 out of 10 people that I meet with do need my services. I am a retirement planner. I'm a fiduciary. I help people manage all the investments and money in their lives. That's what a fiduciary does. So that allows me, the other 9 people, it allows me to give them great free advice. I love helping people. I hope you take advantage of it. And again, I've been having problems with no-shows and last-minute cancellations. I have a time set aside specifically for you. Please, please, please do not cancel last minute, and please, please, please show up. And we'll send you confirmation text. Just respond to the text so we know that you are confirmed and that you're coming. So that is the main part of my presentation. I hope that was helpful. I'm getting some questions here. Again, a lot of the questions I'm getting are so specific to people's situations. And that makes this all very complicated. I don't know what to do. I tell you what, I'm getting a good number of questions here. If you have a question and would like me to answer it, why don't you email it to me, okay? It's David at, now these are just for very basic questions. Very basic questions. I'm unable to strategize. I'm unable to do anything like that. But if you just have a very basic question, a point of emphasis you didn't quite understand, you can go to david@kennonfinancial.com, KENNON.com, david@kennonfinancial.com. So I hope that was very beneficial to everyone. I hope I found some money for you. I hope you enjoyed it and learned a lot. And I do these every Saturday morning at 10 a.m. So please, if you have friends or family or whatever that would benefit from this, have them sign up. You can sign up at socialsecurityrsvp.com. Social Security RSVP.com. socialsecurityrsvp.com. Okay. So again, like I said, I hope that was helpful. Enjoyed giving the presentation, and everyone have a blessed weekend.